Audio Jungle.
Telangana Jagriti is hosting this conference for a very selfish reason. I would say selfish because I am really not fine. I am not fine with 22,000 children dying every year in this world. I am definitely not fine with the fact that 800 million people go hungry in this world every day. And I am absolutely not fine with the fact that in this modern world, we still have war today. And if we were to survive as a collective human race, if we were to survive, I believe we should end these issues. I believe we should end these global problems. And all of us know in our hearts that these are the problems that we created ourselves. And how can we emancipate the world from these problems is the theme of this conference. And I truly wish the intellectuals, the delegates who are here today will enlighten the rest of the youth and the world order to work towards emancipating world from these problems which we ourselves have created. And when I thought about my contribution as an individual to make sure we do away with these world problems, I figured it cannot be done individually. I figured Telangana Jagriti as an individual organization cannot work towards solving these problems alone. We need to create a network of intellectuals. We need to work with spirited youngsters. We need to identify young leaders, nurture them, and provide them with the material so that they tomorrow can lead the world and free the world from these issues. To me, I believe the 550 delegates who are present here today are the solution to this problem. And I found that the only solution is to make sure that the youth of the world is organized together. And there is a necessity for the global youth to collaborate and work together. Today, the world's population is young. About 42% of people are under the age of 25. 1 in 4 people alive today is a young person aged between 15 and 29. There is nearly 1.8 billion in total in this world of the young population. But unfortunately, 90% of this 1.8 billion live in developing countries. So there is huge difference between youngsters who live in developed countries versus the youngsters who live in the developing countries. Now, how do we address these differences? How do we address these parities? And how do we create a level playing field is what we need to really understand and think in this conference. And for instance, the youth mortality rate on an average is 5 times higher in the poorer countries when we think about compare with the rich countries. And even if, say, a youngster survives in a poor country, unfortunately, they cannot have decent education, decent health care, and employment. So how do we, as a collective, as a unit, work towards resolving these issues is the main theme of this conference. And most unfortunate thing today in the world is that some of the youth have to deal with violence on a daily basis in their lives. How do we, as a global community, contribute towards removing violence from the world? These are, I believe, larger than life questions, but can be addressed if we fight it together. And especially for the girls and young women, the future looks particularly precarious. I say this with great sadness because in only 40% of the countries, we have achieved something close to a gender parity in secondary education. In tertiary education, that figure drops to 4% further. And young females are on an average twice as likely as young males to be out of education, to be out of employment, and out of training. And very unfortunately, HIV prevalence rates also are significantly higher among young females. So I urge upon the intellectual community in this conference to focus more on this aspect of the youth development, because after all, youth also means young women, not only young men. So I truly urge the intellectuals in this conference to focus more on young women. And in some aspects, I was speaking about rich and poor nations, but in some aspects, however, the best and the worst performing countries are similar. The issues like unemployment, issues like drug abuse, issues like mental disorder, these rates among the young people are equally worrying in all the nations alike, both rich and poor. So these problems across the globe in both these countries are there, and I believe they are interconnected. These are all created by human beings. But the solution to these problems also has to come from the human being.
ఏంటండి వీడియో నచ్చిందా? అయితే ఓ లైక్ వేసుకోండి, లేదంటే ఓ కామెంట్ చేయండి. ఎప్పటికప్పుడు మా వీడియోస్ చూడాలంటే సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేసుకోండి.